Lightning sliced through the darkening sky as a yellow school bus shuddered, Floodwaters already climbing past its wheels. Inside, 30 children and 6 teachers watched in growing horror as the rushing current rocked their vehicle. Spring storms had transformed central Nebraska's Platte River Basin into a raging torrent. What began as a routine field trip for Oak Ridge Middle School had become a life-threatening emergency when flash flooding overtook the rural road. Now, the bus had stranded on a rapidly disappearing section of highway, 15 miles from the nearest town. "The water is coming up through the floor," cried one of the younger students, pointing at the dampness spreading across the rubber matting. Outside, the thundering deluge continued, water rising 6 inches every 15 minutes. Driver Frank Myers tried the radio again. "Dispatch, this is Bus 17. Water's rising fast. ETA on emergency services." Static answered him, then a broken voice. "At least 2 hours, roads washed out." 6 miles away, William Coleman looked up from his camping gear as emergency alerts blared from his truck radio. The 62-year-old retired Air Force colonel's weather-lined face tightened as he registered the coordinates. "School bus trapped by floodwaters," the broadcast repeated. "All available emergency personnel responding. Civilians advised to avoid the area." Coleman's 20 years as an Air Force search and rescue specialist flashed through his mind. His specialty had been high-risk personnel extraction in extreme environments, from hurricane-battered coastlines to mountain flash floods. Without hesitation, he loaded his gear and started his truck. As he navigated around flooded sections of back road, Coleman's military training kicked in automatically, assessing risks, cataloging resources, formulating approach strategies. When he finally parked at the highest ground nearest the scene, the vista before him confirmed his worst fears. The school bus was becoming an island in a widening, churning sea. Coleman's military-issue binoculars revealed the critical variables any rescue operation would face. The water's lateral flow rate, approximately 15 knots, he estimated, made conventional approach nearly impossible. The rising water level would reach the bus windows within 90 minutes. Most concerning was the bus itself, already showing signs of instability as rushing water eroded the road beneath it. "Sir, you can't go down there," a sheriff's deputy called, jogging up to Coleman's position. "We've got rescue teams on the way." "How long?" Coleman asked, not lowering his binoculars. 2 hours minimum. Roads are gone in 3 directions. Coleman nodded, his face grim. "That bus doesn't have 2 hours. Through his binoculars, he spotted a teacher opening the roof hatch, waving frantically. The bus shifted visibly, tilting several inches toward the deepest water. His radio crackled as he tuned to the emergency frequency. "Bus 17, this is Colonel William Coleman, retired Air Force search and rescue. What's your situation?" The response came broken but clear enough. 2 students having asthma attacks, medication running low, water coming in, bus is moving. To make matters worse, the regional emergency broadcast updated. "Attention all personnel. Platte River Dam operators report potential emergency release necessary within 3 hours due to structural concerns." Coleman surveyed the potential resources at his disposal. His truck contained climbing equipment from his weekend plans. 2 200-foot lengths of rescue-grade rope, carabiners, harnesses, and pulleys. A large oak tree stood on the side of the floodwaters, and an abandoned farm structure was visible on high ground beyond the bus, potential anchor points for a rope system. For local men had gathered nearby, watching the scene in helpless anxiety. Coleman approached them, his military-bearing automatic. "Any of you have experience with boats, climbing, or emergency work?" 2 raised their hands, a rock climber and a volunteer firefighter. The others were willing but untrained. "Helicopter rescue?" one suggested. Coleman shook his head. "Weather's too severe for air operations. Those downdrafts would make approach impossible." A small fishing boat had already been attempted and nearly capsized in the current. The firefighter confirmed that their department's rescue raft was stranded on the wrong side of collapsed bridge. Coleman felt a familiar weight of command decision settling on his shoulders. Looking at the bus, he recalled a similar extraction during the Philippines typhoon relief operation. 22 Marines trapped when their transport was caught in a flash flood. The techniques they developed had worked then. His mind calculated angles, forces, and weight tolerances, adapting military extraction protocols for civilian application. At 62, he wasn't as strong as he once was, but the principles remained sound. His rescue experience told him they needed to act within 30 minutes to establish a viable evacuation route. "We're going to build a high-angle traverse system," he announced, opening his truck to retrieve equipment. "I need every piece of rope you can find, and I need these anchor points secured exactly as I show you." As if answering some unspoken challenge, the heavens opened further, rain pounding down in sheets. In the distance, the bus rocked again, more severely this time. Coleman knew the decision he was about to make would either save 36 lives or put his own at terrible risk. Perhaps both. "This is a modified A-frame traverse system," Coleman explained, sketching quickly in the mud with a stick. The 4 volunteers huddled close under the downpour. "We'll establish anchor points here at the Oak and there at the farm structure. The rope system will create a diagonal line over the water." His mind flashed back to Air Force pararescue training at Kirtland, the instructors drilling them on rope systems until they could build them blindfolded. Later, in the Philippines, he'd supervise a modification of these techniques to evacuate civilians from flood zones. Military rescue operates on the stabilize, then extract principle, Coleman continued, now uncoiling the ropes with practice efficiency. "Our first priority is preventing that bus from shifting further." The rock climber, Mike, nodded in understanding. "Like setting protection on a climbing route." "Exactly. We create redundant safety systems." Coleman assigned roles with the clarity of mission briefing. Mike would help establish the rope system. The firefighter, Dave, would handle communications and medical support. The other 2 would manage the receiving area and assist evacuees. Working methodically despite the rain, Coleman demonstrated specialized knots, the military-grade tensioning hitches, and load-distributing anchors that had saved lives in combat zones. He modified the standard pulley system to create a traversable line that could support the weight of an adult plus a child. "In Air Force water rescue, we categorize extraction priorities," he explained, organizing the carabiners. Medical emergencies first, then the most vulnerable, then the remainder in weight-ascending order. He improvised flotation devices from empty water containers and backpacks, a technique developed for helicopter water rescues when standard equipment was unavailable. Each move reflected years of specialized training, now repurposed for civilian rescue. Coleman transmitted specific instructions to the bus, using precise military terminology translated into civilian language. "Prepare the students by weight class, lightest first. Anyone with medical issues marked as priority alpha." Within 20 minutes, the main support line was secured between the oak tree and the distant farm structure, creating a rope bridge approximately 15 feet above the water surface. Coleman had integrated a pulley system that would allow controlled movement along the line, essential for transporting children safely. "We need a first crossing to secure the bus end," Coleman stated, checking the harness he'd put on. This was the most dangerous part. Someone had to cross first to secure the system to the bus. "I'll go," Mike volunteered. Coleman shook his head. "I've done this before. The line needs final adjustments only experience can judge." Before anyone could protest, Coleman clipped onto the traverse line and began the crossing, using upper body strength to pull himself along the diagonal rope. The others watched tensely as the retired colonel navigated above the churning floodwaters, rain pelting his determined figure. At 62, his shoulders burned with the effort, but muscle memory from countless operations took over. Halfway across, the current's roar nearly drowned out all other sound. Coleman focused on his breathing, controlled inhalations and exhalations as taught in Special Operations Stress Management. Reaching the bus, he secured himself to the roof rack and signaled success. Using specialized knots, he established a secondary anchor point on the bus itself, then created the retrieval system that would bring children across one by one. Coleman's voice crackled over the radio. System established. Beginning evacuation protocol. Priority Alpha cases first. Inside the bus, he found teachers attempting to maintain calm among increasingly frightened children. Coleman's commanding presence had an immediate effect. Here was someone who knew exactly what to do. He quickly assessed the asthmatic students and organized the evacuation sequence using the same triage principles applied in military mass casualty situations. "We're going to get everyone out," he assured them with the quiet confidence that had steadied troops in combat zones. "This is a standard extraction procedure. Follow my instructions precisely." The first evacuee, a 13-year-old girl with severe asthma, watched wide-eyed as Coleman secured her into the improvised harness. "This works just like the systems we use to rescue people from Black Hawk helicopters," he explained calmly, checking each connection point twice. "You'll be across in less than 2 minutes." Outside, the water had risen to the bottom of the bus windows. A massive tree trunk slammed into the vehicle's side, causing it to lurch dramatically. Several children screamed. "Accelerated time frame," Coleman announced, military terseness taking over. "We've lost stability faster than projected." He signaled to the shore team, and they began pulling the first student across. The girl moved smoothly above the raging waters, the pulley system working perfectly until, halfway across, one of the anchor points on the bus shifted as the vehicle settled deeper. The line suddenly sagged, leaving the girl dangling just 8 feet above the flood. Coleman reacted instantly, securing himself with a backup line. He leaned out from the bus roof and readjusted the main anchor, muscles straining against the combined forces of gravity and tension. The line stabilized, and the girl continued to safety. Structural integrity compromised, he reported through clenched teeth. Bus shifting. Evacuation speed must increase. The next 3 children were sent across in rapid succession. Then disaster struck. A 10-year-old boy panicked midway across, thrashing the harness and causing the line to swing violently. "Eyes on me, soldier," Coleman called out, using the commanding tone that had steadied terrified rookies in combat zones. "Mission is crossing this line. Your job is to hold position. Can you complete your mission?" The military framing worked. The boy nodded, stilled himself, and was quickly pulled to safety. Inside the bus, water began seeping to the floor in earnest. A teacher helping with preparations slipped and injured her ankle. Coleman adapted immediately, creating an improvised splint from first aid supplies and modifying a harness system to accommodate her limited mobility. "In rescue operations, we adjust to changing conditions," he explained to wide-eyed students watching him work. "Always have a contingency plan." 20 students had been evacuated when the bus shifted again, this time tilting 10 degrees toward the current. The metal groaned ominously as water pressure built against its side. "Final phase," Coleman ordered, his voice betraying no fear despite the deteriorating situation. Remaining evacuees switched to rapid deployment protocol. Using techniques developed for mass casualty evacuation in combat zones, Coleman began sending the remaining children across at 90-second intervals, personally checking each harness despite the bus's increasingly precarious angle. When only Coleman and 2 teachers remained, catastrophe struck. The bus lurched violently as the road beneath it completely gave way. Water poured through the door seams as the vehicle slid several feet toward the deepest part of the flood. "Go now," Coleman ordered the teachers, securing them to the line as the bus interior began flooding. The last teacher had just cleared the roof when the vehicle shifted again, throwing Coleman off balance. He fell hard against a metal surface, his safety line tangling around his leg. Working through shooting pain in his shoulder, an old military injury reawakened. Coleman freed himself and clipped onto the traverse line. The bus was now moving, beginning to float free in the current. With a final surge of strength, the retired colonel pulled himself onto the line just as the bus roof disappeared beneath him. Hanging from a rope, water churning just feet below, Coleman began the agonizing journey to shore. Each pull tested the limits of his endurance, rain and wind battering his exhausted form. The shore team watched in horror, unable to assist until he reached the halfway point where their ropes could finally reach him. When Coleman's feet finally touched solid ground, 36 saved lives erupted in cheers and tears. Parents who had arrived at the evacuation point rushed forward, embracing their children with the desperate relief of narrowly avoided tragedy. Behind them, the school bus finally surrendered to flood, rolling and disappearing beneath the churning waters. Emergency medical technicians, having finally reached the scene, moved quickly to assess the evacuees. The asthmatic students received immediate treatment, while Coleman quietly stepped aside, refusing attention despite his obvious exhaustion and injured shoulder. "Sir, that was the most incredible civilian rescue I've ever witnessed," the fire chief told him, shaking his hand firmly. "Your rope system, I've never seen anything like it." Coleman shook his head modestly. Standard Air Force extraction technique, modified for the circumstances. The teachers kept those kids calm. That's what made it work. As the community gathered for a recognition ceremony the following week, Coleman reluctantly took the microphone. "In 20 years of military service, I learned something profound. The skills we develop to protect our nation aren't just for battlefields. They're for moments like these, when our neighbors need us most." He paused, looking at the faces of the children he'd saved. Every veteran carries invisible tools, training, discipline, creative problem-solving, that continue serving long after the uniform comes off. Maybe that's the greatest gift of military service, being prepared when ordinary days suddenly become extraordinary challenges. The story of the Platte River Rescue spread quickly, inspiring veterans across the country to share how their military training had prepared them for civilian emergencies. Several parents from Oak Ridge Middle School started a community emergency preparedness program, with Coleman providing occasional guidance. "The real heroes," Coleman insisted in a rare local news interview, "are the teachers who maintain their composure and these communities that support veterans transitioning back to civilian life." The incident raised important questions about how society values veterans' continuing contributions. How many other retired service members quietly use their specialized training to make communities safer? What other military skills might benefit civilian emergency response? And most importantly, how can we better recognize these contributions? For anyone watching the story unfold, the message was clear. Our veterans never truly stop serving. They simply find new missions in everyday life, standing ready when crisis strikes, and ordinary moments demand extraordinary courage. Have you ever witnessed a veteran using military training in a civilian emergency? Share your story in the comments below. And if you know a veteran who deserves recognition for their continued service to community, hit the like button in their honor. Subscribe for more incredible stories of how military heroes continue to serve long after hanging up their uniforms.